preparing for a career transition to the private sector, chances are you have been lied to and misled for years and years. Today, I'm going to cover the 7 myths and the actual truths about the transition from a life of service to the private sector. Let's get started. Hello everybody, welcome to the Recruiting Heroes Show. This is episode 29. My name is Colin Whittington. I am your host. I'm also the CEO and founder of Recruiting Heroes LLC, a national employment agency dedicated to helping you, American law enforcement officers and veterans, transition to from a life of service to the private sector. I'm also honored to be a 2-time best-selling author, including of my first book, which is Beyond the Thin Blue Line, Career Strategies for Law Enforcement Officers. And this book covers everything that you need to know about transitioning from a life of service to the private sector. So do check that out. As always, I am giving away our free Heroes Job Search Guide today. But today is an extra special occasion because it has just gotten a brand new facelift, gotten even better than before, and it's just a phenomenal resource for you. It comes with my professional resume template, instructions on how to write a fantastic resume, LinkedIn optimization tips, interview tips, and so much more. Again, it's totally for free, so check it out. The link is down below. It's also going to be on my website, which is recruitingheroesllc.com. So make sure you download that. But let's get right into it, talking about the 7 myths that I have heard from hundreds of law enforcement officers who have heard these from their command staff members, other law enforcement officers, and just the general public, which is these 7 myths are what are really holding people back from going after what they want to do in their life after service. So the very first myth is that I am just a cop. My skills don't apply to the private sector. This is honestly one of the saddest things that I hear, and I hear it almost on every single conversation I have with a law enforcement officer, whether they be patrol officers or command staff level members. A lot of you law enforcement officers don't feel that the skills that you have gained during your career could possibly translate to the private sector. And the truth of the matter is that you couldn't be more wrong. There are few professions that would prepare anybody for life in the private sector more than law enforcement. You have had to learn teamwork, leadership, critical thinking, thinking on your feet, problem solving, and a host of technical skills as well. Every single day you are faced with situations that the normal citizen would absolutely be horrified by, and they would probably freeze up and not be able to do their job. But you have learned to work the problem and find solutions to these complex problems, and this is what makes you so valuable in the private sector. But it's all about how you articulate that skill set. It's articulating your skill set on your resume, on your cover letter, on your LinkedIn, and especially during interviews with employers. So many officers, have self-doubt, don't feel that they're actually worthy of the transition to the private sector. So they try to minimize what they've done. That's not the time you want to minimize or be humble about what you've accomplished. You want to show the person interviewing you for the job that you are the best fit for the private sector. Again, in my book, I talk about how to translate your skills to fit a resume or a cover letter or LinkedIn, and write it in a way that civilian employers can understand, right? So many cops talking away as if they're talking to another cop, right? You can talk about how I was an FTO in law enforcement. I know what that means because I was an FTO and I was in law enforcement. But if you are a civilian and you hear that term, you would not know what it means. Even if you spelled it out and said I was a field training officer, they still wouldn't know what it means. They wouldn't understand the coaching and mentoring that goes into it, the administrative tasks, the fact that you have to do performance evaluations on a daily basis, and really be a project manager of this project, which is a rookie officer. So much more goes into being an FTO than just saying I coach new employees. So you want to make sure you articulate that skill set as well as all your other skill sets, and know that you are not just a cop. You are a phenomenal professional who could absolutely do well in the private sector. So that is the myth number 1, that a cop can't possibly bring anything to the private sector. I want you to absolutely get that out of your mind because it's 100% false. The second one, this is one that I struggled with. If I leave my career early, I am throwing away my entire career. And a lot of that has to do with pensions and promotions and things like that. So that was my problem. So I was 7 years into my career, I was a sergeant, and in my mind I was thinking, well, I'm already 7 years in. If I get to 20, I'll have a pension, I'll have a pretty decent pension. Not great, but it's an okay one. That's not the right way to go through life, in my opinion. Okay, if you're at year 19, you probably shouldn't leave a 1 year ahead of time, because then you probably would be throwing away so much money and benefits that you'd get from your pension. But if you're like me, you're 5 to 10 years in, you still have another 10 to 15, 20 years to go. Life is far too short to stay in a profession that doesn't fulfill you. Let me add in really quick though, that I'm never trying to convince anybody to leave law enforcement. If you're still passionate about that career, I want you to stay in it, because we need the best law enforcement officers on the thin blue line to keep our communities safe. But if you, like me, have decided that law enforcement isn't really where you want to be anymore, don't let the thought of a pension hold you back. Because in most cases, the pensions nowadays are not nearly good enough to stay in a profession that is not fulfilling to you anymore. That's incredibly dangerous. And again, the pensions just aren't living up to what they used to do. So if you're 5 to 10, even 12, 13 years in and you want to leave, don't think of it as throwing your career away. Think of it as reinventing your career and finding success in the private sector. All right, that's myth number 2. The third one is probably the second most common thing I hear after the whole "I'm not a good fit for anything." The myth number 3 is that law enforcement officers are only suitable for roles in private security, corporate security, or investigations. This is also completely false. Now, if you're interested in those type of careers, absolutely go for it. Cops can do so well in those industries. If you read my book, I talk about Brian Tuskin in the book, right? He was a law enforcement officer and a detective. Never got to any kind of rank though, just a detective. He ended up leaving to work for Microsoft, right, as a security manager. After over the course of a 20 plus year long career with Microsoft, he kept working his way up, and his skills from law enforcement were so powerful that he kept getting promotions, and he ended his career with Microsoft as the chief security officer. So he was the highest ranking security officer for the entire corporation, and Microsoft, again, is probably the 3rd biggest company in the world. So there is amazing opportunity in the security sector. But if you are so done with that type of environment, you don't want to have anything to do with security or investigations, don't feel like you are stuck in that type of environment. You can go into anything you want. Look at me, I went into recruiting and then business ownership, right? Other people have gone into the finance world, or the IT industry, or healthcare, or project management, or a whole host of other industries, and that is absolutely possible for you. It just takes proper planning and, again, proper articulation of your skill set. So if you are in law enforcement, you still have a year or 2 left before you want to leave, start looking into the industries that interest you and see what you can do to make yourself more competitive in that specific industry. Go to networking events, go to trainings, get certifications, and find ways to make yourself stand out from the crowd. Because then there's absolutely no reason why you couldn't do phenomenally well in any industry that you put your mind to. It just takes additional work. And that's one reason why a lot of law enforcement officers do go the security route, because it's an easy transition. Where a transition into the IT industry or other ones would just take a little bit more planning, a little bit more forethought than moving to security. But if you want to do something completely different, just know it's 100% possible, and that the myth about law enforcement officers only being suitable for security or investigations is 100% a myth. All right, myth number 4. It's too late for me to change careers. Again, this kind of ties back to myth number 2 about you're throwing your career away. I find that law enforcement officers, regardless of how long they've served, can do phenomenally well in the private sector. Whether they've only served a handful of years in law enforcement like me, I did about 8, or they've served 30 plus years, you can absolutely reinvent yourself in the private sector. Is there age discrimination in the private sector? Sure, it does happen. Some companies absolutely will do that. But those are companies that you wouldn't want to work for anyway. The companies that are out there that are actually good companies that value their employees will value and be excited about your experience. And it doesn't matter if you're 25 years old or 55 years old. You can go into the private sector and completely recreate your career and go after something that really excites you. And that's what I want for you. I don't want you just to have a job after law enforcement. I want you to have a real passion in life. Because again, law enforcement is such an identity-defining career that when you leave it, and if you go to a job that's just a job, it's going to be really challenging to really handle that type of change. But if you leave law enforcement and go to a career that really excites you, like me, I am excited to come to work every day. I'm excited to talk to you every day. it makes life so much more exciting, and you'll feel so much more fulfilled in your career. So again, it's never too late to start a new career. So never think that this myth is true, because it 100% is not. All right, myth number 5. This is one I actually I talked to a gentleman today that absolutely lived this myth, unfortunately, that they will figure it out once they resign. So the myth is that you will wait until you resign or retire from law enforcement to figure it out. Right, like I mentioned, I was talking to an officer today. He had served 20-some plus years in law enforcement, decided he wanted to retire, but then he also wanted to take 5 to 6 months off, which is great. I totally understand that. But he did very little, if any, planning about what he would do after that, thinking that it would be a piece of cake to get into the next industry. He actually said that to me. He thought it was going to be easy, which is a very common thought. He has now been looking for a job for the last 6 or 7 months without any kind of luck. And I will tell you that this job market is horrific. It's terrible, especially now with the federal government workers coming into the private sector, companies laying off, not hiring as much. It's a very challenging job market. So the one thing I always stress is start the search for your next career as soon as possible. Even 3 years out. If you still have 3 years in law enforcement, at least start thinking about it. Read my book, listen to my videos, go do other research, look into the industries that really inspire you or interest you, and start working towards the certifications that are listed in those type of job descriptions. And start really thinking about what you want to do next. That way, your transition from law enforcement to the private sector will be smooth and easy, versus one filled with stress, uncertainty, and doubt, which is the case with so many officers. So this myth, unfortunately, is one that has really hurt a ton of officers, and a lot of it has to do with agencies not helping their people transition. I have a 4-hour class where I go to agencies and teach on the transition from law enforcement to the private sector, including resumes, LinkedIn, interview training, and everything else about the transition. And most agencies don't want me to come teach this subject to their people. They would much rather their officers retire and be kind of screwed afterwards, which is a real shame. So don't let that happen to you. If your agency refuses to have me come teach you this subject, watch my videos, get on a phone call with me. Let's start planning out your career transition a few years before you're actually needing to retire or resign, because that will make your transition so much easier. Do not wait until it's too late to start planning. Myth number 6 is that LinkedIn is not for cops. All right, this one, I don't think it's a huge myth anymore, but it was for a long time. Cops felt they didn't belong on LinkedIn, right? It wasn't for them. And I always kind of joke that cops kind of fall in 2 categories. Those that post on social media far too much, and those who don't post on social media at all. And I think what you want to do is be right in the middle of those 2 groups and use LinkedIn to network, to find opportunities, and to grow your career. LinkedIn is very different from a Facebook, an Instagram, a Twitter, or an X nowadays. It's the largest professional networking site in the world. And when you use it accurately and professionally, it can absolutely change your career and your life. It has changed my life, and I pay them a ton of money every single year, so I'm not getting paid to say this, but LinkedIn is a game changer. Yes, there are scammers on there. Yes, it's not always used the way it's supposed to be used, but it's still by far the best professional networking site in the world. So I encourage you to use it. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on the platform. If you send me a connection request and I see you're in law enforcement or in military, I will 100% accept it, and we can have a conversation on there. And if you need help with optimizing your LinkedIn, it's a service I offer. Mention watching this video and I'll give you 25% off. So be sure to reach out to us at recruitingheroesllc.com and ask about our LinkedIn optimization, interview training, resume writing, or other services as well, and I'd be happy to help you and offer 25% off. But again, LinkedIn is absolutely for cops. So do not believe the myth that you shouldn't be on that platform, because that is hurting you more than you know. And the final myth is that you feel that you're going to lose your identity when you leave law enforcement. And this is something that I was really concerned about. As I mentioned earlier, law enforcement is a very identity-defining career. You know, when someone asks you who you are, saying you're a cop is probably the first or one of the first things that you will say. When you go in the private sector, that's not always the case. You know, not everyone's going to say, I'm a recruiter, or I'm a project manager. They'll talk about being a husband, a wife, a spouse, a father, a son or daughter, a football player, a soccer player, and then later on they'll talk about their career. But just because you're leaving law enforcement doesn't mean you're losing your identity. You're just reshaping it. Now you're going to find ways to find meaning in your personal life as well as professional life in the private sector. So while you might not be in the brotherhood and sisterhood of law enforcement anymore, just know that there are other people who have gone through the exact same path you're going on. So you can connect with them, you can network with them, you can maintain that relationship. So just because you're no longer wearing the badge doesn't mean you've lost the identity. It's just changed some, right? You're still a former law enforcement officer, which means you can still connect with law enforcement professionals, but now you're also having more time with your family, you're able to focus on a whole new career, which should be exciting for you as well. So don't think that just because you're no longer in law enforcement that the whole world comes to an end, because trust me, it doesn't. The first few weeks are challenging. You'll miss your buddies and you'll miss the rush of going to a hot call from time to time, but overall, that transition is just an exciting one. It's nice to have a little break from that lifestyle and to experience something completely new. But these are the 7 myths that I've seen so prevalent in the law enforcement community, and so many officers really believe them, and it's letting them hold themselves back from their true potential. And I don't want that to be the case for you. You can do so much in the private sector and in your life after law enforcement. So go after it with excitement and passion, because you are destined for greatness, and I cannot wait to see what you do next. Again, reach out to me on LinkedIn. Let's connect on there. Get my free download. It's the Heroes Job Search Guide, completely for free. I'll link it down below at the very top of the description of this video, and it's also at recruitingheroesllc.com. It's completely for free. It's a great resource, and I've mentioned it a few times just in passing. I'll have an official announcement soon, but in the next month or two, I'm going to be coming out with my Heroes Academy. It's my flagship online course. It's unbelievable. It's my step-by-step guide on helping you get from law enforcement to the private sector. Excuse me, with a ton of resources, videos, documents, downloadables, and everything you possibly could need to be absolutely successful in your career transition. And I'm so excited for it, so stay tuned for that as well. Please like this video, comment down below if you have questions, and then subscribe to this channel. It would mean the world to me. I always love to see when people add themselves to this channel. I think it means that they're liking this video and getting something from it. So if you don't mind subscribing to this video, this channel would mean so much to me. But until our next video, please stay safe out there. It's a crazy world. And I thank you for your service, and I can't wait to talk to you again in a couple of days. Bye, guys.